Today, we're diving into a case that's as heartbreaking as it is mysterious, the disappearance of Susan Powell.
Yeah.
This isn't just another missing person case.
No,
It's a story that captivated the nation.
absolutely.
A story about a seemingly happy family that harbored really dark secrets.
Right.
And trust me, this one is going to stay with you long after we finish this deep dive.
What makes this case so fascinating and honestly really disturbing
Yeah.
is how it just highlights the really insidious nature of domestic abuse.
Mm-hmm.
We often think of abuse as something that's right out in the open, but so much of it happens behind closed doors,
Yeah.
hidden from view.
Right.
And that's what makes Susan's story so compelling and so tragic.
Right. It all started back in 2009 in a quiet suburb of Salt Lake City, Utah.
Hmm.
Susan Powell, a young mother of two, vanished without a trace,
Yeah.
leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a family shattered by secrets.
So let's set the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine yourself stepping into Susan's world. She was married to Josh Powell, and on the surface, they seemed like any other young couple navigating the challenges of family life.
Right.
They had two beautiful sons, Charlie and Braden,
Mm-hmm.
and Susan was, by all accounts, a devoted mother.
But as you dig deeper, you start to see the cracks in the facade.
Yeah.
Things weren't as picture perfect as they appeared.
Right.
Financial strain was mounting.
Yeah.
And there were whispers of Josh's controlling and increasingly volatile behavior.
And here's where it gets really interesting and honestly quite chilling.
Okay.
Susan wasn't just silently enduring this.
Right.
She was actively documenting her fears.
Wow.
She confided in friends and family,
Mm.
kept detailed journals, and even made a video inventory of her assets.
Wow, that's proactive. Why would she go to such length?
Think about it. She was creating a record, a breadcrumb trail, in case something were to happen to her.
Right.
This is a common and sadly often necessary tactic for victims of domestic abuse.
Yeah.
They're trying to protect themselves, to leave evidence behind, to ensure their voices are heard, even if they're no longer able to speak for themselves.
Right.
And in Susan's case, these actions would prove to be incredibly significant as the story unfolds.
So this wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment decision. Susan was clearly worried, sensing danger.
Exactly. And this is where we see the insidious nature of domestic abuse. It's a gradual escalation of control and manipulation,
Right.
often starting subtly and intensifying over time. Susan was aware of the danger she was in,
Right.
and she was trying to take steps to protect herself.
Then comes December 6th, 2009, the day Susan disappeared.
Right.
She was last seen at church with her family, spent some time with neighbors, and was believed to have returned home.
Yeah.
But that's where the trail goes cold.
Right.
The next day, her sons weren't at daycare,
Right.
and no one seemed to know where any of them were.
And this is when the alarm bells start ringing, not just for her loved ones, but for investigators as well. That lack of any confirmed sightings after her presumed return home,
Yeah.
coupled with the children's absence,
Yeah.
immediately cast a shadow of suspicion over the entire situation.
Yeah.
It just didn't add up.
And then enter Josh Powell, returning home with the kids, offering an explanation that seemed, well, a bit unbelievable.
Yes, his story was about as plausible as a snowman in July.
Okay.
He claimed he'd taken his sons on a sudden midnight camping trip in the freezing Utah desert.
With young children,
Yeah,
in the middle of the night.
in the middle of the night with no warning. It just didn't make sense.
So right off the bat, his story is raising red flags.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand in missing person cases, those initial hours and days are absolutely critical.
Right.
Every detail matters. Every inconsistency can be a clue.
Yeah.
And in this case, Josh's account, rather than clarifying things, only served to deepen the mystery surrounding Susan's disappearance.
And as the investigation progressed, things got even more complicated. Susan had confided in friends and family about Josh's temper and controlling behavior. The family was in deep financial trouble.
Hmm.
And investigators discovered that Josh had been researching life insurance policies on Susan.
Right.
But the most chilling discovery was yet to come.
Yes. The discovery of Susan's handwritten will was a turning point in the investigation.
Okay.
It wasn't just some legal document tucked away in a drawer.
Right.
It was a cry for help, a desperate attempt to protect herself and her children.
Wow.
In it, she explicitly stated her fear of harm from Josh.
Oh, wow.
Imagine the weight of that document, her own words staring back at investigators.
Yeah. It sends chills down your spine just thinking about it.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just speculation anymore. It
Yeah.
was documented fear.
Right.
And as we'll see, that will plays a major role in understanding the dynamics of this case.
Absolutely. And, it's important to note that while Susan's case is unique in its details, it unfortunately reflects a pattern that we see all too often in cases of domestic violence.
Right.
The abuser's behavior escalates over time,
Yeah.
and the victim, often fearing for their safety, takes steps to document the abuse, to leave a record in case the worst should happen.
So, tragically, Susan's intuition was right.
Yeah.
She knew she was in danger,
Right.
and she tried to prepare for the unthinkable.
And that's what makes this case so heartbreaking. She was trying to protect herself, but the system, the people who were supposed to help, weren't able to intervene in time.
And to make matters worse, Josh's behavior after Susan's disappearance only intensified the suspicions surrounding him.
Yeah.
He rented cars, traveled long distances,
Right.
all without clear explanations. It seemed like he was trying to cover his tracks.
You're absolutely right. And this brings up a crucial point about missing person cases.
Yeah.
Often, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, suspicious behavior, but not that slam dunk, undeniable proof.
Right.
And that makes it incredibly difficult for law enforcement to build a solid case.
Yeah.
They need more than just a gut feeling. They need hard evidence to secure a conviction.
So even though everyone had their suspicions about Josh, proving anything without Susan was going to be a major challenge.
Exactly. And this is where the investigation takes a turn that no one could have predicted.
Okay.
It's not just about a husband and wife anymore. The focus shifts to a much darker, more disturbing element within the Powell family.
This is where Josh's father, Stephen Powell, enters the picture, right?
You got it.
Okay.
And trust me, this is where the case takes a truly disturbing turn.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly suspicious husband, Josh Powell,
Right.
whose story's falling apart at the seams.
Yeah.
And now his father, Stephen Powell, is being pulled into the investigation.
Hmm.
What's the connection here? What did investigators uncover about him?
Well, during a search of Stephen Powell's home, investigators stumbled upon a horrifying collection of materials. Photographs, videos, diaries, all meticulously documenting his obsession with Susan.
Wow.
We're not talking about a harmless crush here.
Right.
This was a deeply disturbing infatuation with his own daughter-in-law.
Wait, so the father was obsessed with Susan?
Yeah.
This is getting more and more unsettling.
It is. And remember, this is happening while the investigation into Susan's disappearance is still ongoing.
Right.
The discovery of Stephen Powell's obsession adds a whole new layer of complexity and darkness to the case.
Right.
It raises questions about a potential conspiracy,
Yeah.
or at the very least, a deeply dysfunctional family dynamic that may have contributed to Susan's disappearance.
It's like something out of a psychological thriller. You have this missing woman, a husband who's acting incredibly suspicious, and now a father-in-law who's harboring this disturbing obsession.
Yeah.
What did the authorities do with this information about Stephen Powell?
Well, based on the evidence they found, Stephen Powell was arrested and charged with voyeurism and possession of child pornography.
Wow.
The charges stem from his secret recordings of young girls, including Susan, in their homes. Think about that for a moment. The father of the main suspect in a missing persons case is now a convicted sex offender.
That's a huge bombshell to drop in the middle of an already complicated investigation.
It is.
What was the public reaction to all of this?
The public was understandably horrified.
Yeah?
It added fuel to the fire, intensifying the scrutiny on Josh Powell. People were demanding answers, and the pressure on law enforcement to find Susan was mounting.
So you have this incredibly complex and disturbing situation, but there's still no sign of Susan.
Right. Despite the mounting evidence and the growing suspicions surrounding both Josh and Stephen Powell, Susan remained missing.
Yeah.
And as the years went by, the case seemed to hit a dead end.
Well, this is where the story takes another heartbreaking turn, right?
Yeah.
In 2012, Josh Powell relocated to Washington State with his sons.
Yeah.
But even with a change of scenery, the shadow of suspicion never faded.
Exactly. And concerns about the boys' well-being grew as they started to hint at a traumatic event involving their mother. Remember, these children were incredibly young when Susan disappeared.
Yeah.
They were living with the knowledge of their mother's absence, and potentially with the weight of a horrifying secret.
It's unimaginable what those boys must have been going through. To lose your mother and then be surrounded by this cloud of suspicion and secrecy, it's just devastating.
Absolutely. And those concerns were amplified when, during a supervised visit with a social worker, young Charlie, The older son uttered a phrase that sent chills down everyone's spine. Mommy was in the trunk.
Oh my God, that's chilling.
Yeah.
To think that a child barely old enough to understand what was happening might have witnessed something so horrific.
Yes, that one statement from Charlie was a gut punch. A stark reminder of the potential horror that those boys may have witnessed.
Right.
It gave a chilling glimpse into the darkness that had enveloped their lives.
So what happened next? What did the authorities do with this new information from Charlie?
Well, Charlie's statement, along with other concerning behaviors from the boys, raised serious alarm bells. It added to the mounting evidence that something terrible had happened to Susan. Social services were involved, and the custody situation with Josh was being reevaluated.
It sounds like things were reaching a breaking point.
You're right. And on February 5th, 2012, that breaking point arrived in the most horrific way imaginable. A social worker arrived at Josh Powell's home for a scheduled visit with the boys. Josh pulled them inside, locked the door, and moments later,
the
house exploded.
Oh my God.
It was a deliberate act, a murder-suicide, meticulously planned by Josh.
Wow.
He took the lives of his two sons and himself, ensuring that they would never reveal the truth about what happened to Susan.
That's just absolutely horrifying. It's hard to even fathom the level of despair and desperation that would drive someone to do something like that.
Yeah.
And the poor boys caught in the middle of it all. It's just an unimaginable tragedy.
It's a heartbreaking reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence.
Yeah.
It shattered any remaining hope of finding Susan alive and robbed those boys of their future.
What happened in the aftermath of the explosion? What was the public reaction?
The shockwaves from that tragedy reverberated throughout the nation.
Yeah.
There was outrage, grief, and a profound sense of loss.
Right.
Many questioned how the system had failed Susan and her sons, how someone like Josh Powell could have been allowed custody of his children despite all the red flags.
It's a question that haunts many cases of domestic violence. Why weren't there more safeguards in place? Why weren't the warning signs taken more seriously?
It's a complex issue. There's often a lack of understanding about the dynamics of abuse.
Yeah.
And there are systemic failures that prevent victims from getting the help they need.
Right.
But in the wake of the Powell tragedy, there was a renewed focus on these issues, a push for reforms that could prevent similar tragedies in the future.
Yeah. So even amidst this unimaginable loss, there was a glimmer of hope that some good might come from it, that lessons could be learned and systems could be improved.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to keep talking about these cases, to keep raising awareness about domestic violence,
Right.
to keep pushing for change.
Yeah.
We can't bring back Susan, Charlie, or Braden, but we can honor their memory by working to create a safer world for others.
I'm speechless. This whole case is just incredibly sad. Even though Josh Powell is dead, the investigation into Susan's disappearance didn't end.
That's right. The search for her remains continued, and the case remains open to this day.
Oh.
But despite extensive searches and numerous theories, Susan's body has never been found.
So where does that leave us? What are some of the prevailing theories about what happened to Susan? It's hard to believe that after all this, we still don't know what happened to Susan.
Oh, I know.
It's like she just vanished into thin air. What are some of the theories people have about her disappearance?
Well, with a case this complex and shrouded in mystery, there are bound to be many theories.
Right.
Some people believe Josh acted alone, disposing of Susan's body in a remote location that is yet to be discovered. The vast Utah landscape, with its canyons and deserts, offers plenty of places to hide a body.
That makes sense, given his suspicious behavior and the fact that he was the last person known to see her.
Right.
But what about Stephen Powell? Could he have been involved?
That's another theory that's been explored.
Yeah.
Some believe Stephen Powell may have assisted Josh in disposing of Susan's body.
Okay.
Or even played a more direct role in her disappearance.
Right.
His disturbing obsession with her, coupled with his history of criminal behavior, makes him a person of interest, even if only indirectly.
It's a chilling thought, but given the family dynamics we've uncovered, it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
What other theories are out there?
There are theories involving other individuals.
Right.
Perhaps someone Josh knew, or someone who may have had a motive to harm Susan.
Yeah.
But without any concrete evidence, these theories remain just that, speculation.
So even with Josh Powell's death, the mystery surrounding Susan's disappearance endures. It's a case that continues to fascinate and frustrate, a puzzle with missing pieces that may never be found.
Exactly. And that's the tragedy of it all.
Yeah.
We have a young mother who vanished, A family torn apart by secrets and suspicion, and two innocent children who were robbed of their lives.
Right.
And yet, the central question remains unanswered. What truly happened to Susan Powell?
It's a question that haunts everyone who's followed this case.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that sometimes, even in the age of advanced forensic techniques and tireless investigative efforts, some mysteries may never be fully solved.
You know, what strikes me about Susan's story is her strength and resilience.
Yeah.
Despite living in a situation that was clearly becoming increasingly dangerous, she took steps to protect herself.
Right.
She documented her fears, confided in loved ones, and tried to create a record of what was happening.
It's a testament to her courage and her determination to survive.
Absolutely.
It's tragic that those efforts weren't enough to save her, but her actions speak volumes about the reality of domestic abuse.
Absolutely. Susan's case underscores the importance of recognizing the warning signs of domestic violence and taking action to help those who are in danger.
Right.
It's a reminder that abuse can happen anywhere, to anyone, regardless of social status, education, or background.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in preventing domestic violence.
Right.
We need to listen to those who are reaching out for help, believe their stories, and offer support.
And we need to be aware of the resources available to victims of abuse. There are organizations dedicated to providing shelter, counseling, and legal assistance.
Right.
We need to make sure that victims know they're not alone, that there is help available.
It's a powerful message, and one that's particularly relevant in light of Susan's story. Her case, while tragic, can serve as a catalyst for change, for greater awareness, and for more effective prevention efforts.
You know, as we delve into these true crime cases, it's easy to get caught up in the twists and turns, the whodunits, and the search for answers.
Right.
But it's crucial to remember that these are not just stories. They're real lives, real families, impacted by tragedy.
And that's something we should never lose sight of. Susan Powell's case is a stark reminder of the devastating impact of domestic violence, the importance of early intervention, and the need for ongoing support for victims and their families.
So as we conclude our deep dive into this case, we want to leave you with this thought.
Yeah.
What stood out to you most in Susan's story? What resonated with you?
Right.
What can you do in your own life and community to raise awareness about domestic violence and help those who may be in danger?
The Susan Cox Powell Foundation is a great resource for anyone who wants to learn more about Susan's story.
Absolutely.
The foundation's work in combating domestic violence and how to get involved, you can find them online, and we encourage you to check them out.
These conversations are difficult,
Yeah.
but they're necessary. We believe that by shedding light on these dark corners, by talking about these issues openly and honestly, we can contribute to a world where tragedies like Susan's become less frequent, not more.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.